Hi, welcome to a new video. Today we're filming my June wrap-up. My name's Cara, this is Bianca Reads. Welcome to the video. So I ended up reading 26, I think, books in June. Let me count them. 29, I apologize. 29, so I was really close to like 30 and 30. Pretty close. And I did finish the last one, like the first audiobook of July. I was in the middle of at the end of June. I just had a kind of busy last few days of June, so I didn't quite get to as many as I was hoping. But like 29 is a really good number and I'm really proud of it. And I only had one DNF for the whole month, so that's also something to be proud of. Really good ratings across the board. Lots of 5s, lots of 4s. I think only like 4 3-stars out of those 29. One DNF. No 2s or 1s. Overall, a really good reading month. So let's jump right in. I was participating in the Clear Shit Volume 1.5 readathon, which was a month long, but mini for Clear Shit. Clear Shit's normally a 2-month readathon. So it was the mini Clear Shit version, and I was also participating in the Whatever You Want-a-thon. So all the books counted towards Whatever You Want-a-thon because of the nature of the readathon, and I was keeping track of my points only through the portal, so I don't have my own personal points because I didn't do that, but I was putting in my scores to contribute to my team, and I was on the losing team. What the heck? We were Dreams and Drama Queens and we came last. I'm very offended. I should have single-handedly carried that team. No, I'm joking. For Clear Shit, I had a select group of books here because it was only a bingo board and I did complete my bingo board. Can I remember which books go for that now? No, but you can check out my TBR because I didn't change it from my initial TBR. So let's start off. I started off this month by listening to On the Come Up by Andrew Thomas, which is the companion sequel to calm down, to The Hate You Give. This is about Brie, who really wants to be a rapper, and she's like from the same neighborhood as a Star from The Hate You Give, which is kind of how they connected. Her dad was a famous rapper and died in a gang fight situation, and she really wants to follow in her dad's footsteps in regards to rapping, but along the way gets caught up in some different gang related stuff, and it's a lot about like the barriers to achieving your dreams as a black girl in America. And I really loved it. I loved the audiobook. It was really well done. It featured her raps in the audiobook, and I thought it was really well done. And I'm really excited to read Concrete Rose, which is the prequel following, I think it's Star's dad as a teenager, I think. And that I'm going to be listening to audiobook for that very soon as well. It's been taking a while to come out, so I've been keeping my eyes peeled for it. I gave On the Come Up 5 stars. It was really good. Very different from The Hate You Give, but really good. Then I read, and I was reading this at the start of June. Oh, like I was already partway through this at the start of June. I read Mr. Impossible by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the second book in the Dreamers trilogy, which is an offshoot of the Raven Cycle. I don't like this series anywhere near as much as I liked the Raven Cycle. The Raven Cycle had a lot of atmosphere and things going on that I just loved. But I liked Blue and Gansey. Oh, hello Mika. I liked Blue and Gansey a lot in the Raven Cycle, and Ronan was not my fave. A lot of people love Ronan, so I feel like they love this, but I was never a huge fan of Ronan. And this is kind of his story. I found this a bit convoluted and confusing in a way I didn't like. Sometimes I can really get behind something that I don't really understand, but this I couldn't. It was just kept at a distance from me. So this is a 3 stars. It was fine. I like some of the characters. I specifically really like Jordan and Hennessy and their dynamic. That's the most interesting part of this to me. I liked the things going on with Matthew and Declan. I just don't really get where it's trying to go with the overarching plot. So it was a 3 stars. It was enjoyable, but I didn't absolutely love it. I will read the third one, but I probably won't love it either. I think the first one was also 3 stars. Also, these covers don't make any sense next to each other or individually. They're all so ugly. Like, was the brief make a really ugly cover? Because like I know not everyone does, but I love the original covers for the Raven Cycle. I think they're absolutely stunning. And what the heck are these? I don't even know. Next up, I listened to The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. I got this off my library. It's the first of a trilogy about a girl who's a healer in a prison. She is imprisoned as well, like it's part of the system. And Lynette Noni is an Australian author. I liked this. I ended up giving it a 4 stars, but I think I'd probably bump it down to a 3. It was like, no, wait, that ending. Oh, I forgot about the ending. It was like a 3 stars right up until the ending, and then the ending kind of blew my mind, and I keep forgetting about it, so I'll have to look into reading the second one, because the ending absolutely fucked me up. There were some things that I thought were a bit cheesy and kind of a bit iffy about this as a whole. The cheesy stuff though, when you take into account the ending, kind of puts it a lot into context. But of note, one thing that was like really iffy was like I thought the prison itself was a bit strange. Like it was meant to be for like the world's worst criminals, but it was very just like they let them live their life and they all had jobs and stuff within the prison. So really like it didn't feel like, knowing a lot about prison theory, it didn't feel like a punitive style prison, if that makes sense. Like I don't like abolish prisons, but there are certain things that like we think are humane, good things about modern prisons that just aren't, and are really dehumanizing and hard to live with, especially for like really serious crimes. And there's also historically things that make like prisons worse conditions, and often that's around due to isolation and being contained to a small space for long times. Like those things are a lot more detrimental, and this was meant to be like the worst prison ever, and like for the absolutely most hardened criminals, for the most heinous of crimes, and it just didn't feel like it delivered on that as a prison. Like it felt like a very functional, like I hate prisons full stop, but like of any prison, it was very, everyone had a role, everyone was doing their jobs, they were just like not supported, but like they were all kind of fed. They just weren't given access to recourse when there was into community struggles. Like it was more about like no one was going to help you if you were the weakest and some bully tried to bully you out of your food, rather than like we're literally starving you and not giving you food. And just like it built itself up to be this really, really awful prison, and it wasn't that bad. So then I didn't believe a lot of what was, like it didn't feel believable, because if you're trying to sell yourself as this like absolutely most awful prison ever, that wasn't it. It wasn't it. I didn't really feel the urgency, like I didn't feel the plight in the same aspect. Like abolish all prisons, awful, but like if you're gonna sell me this as like the worst prison to ever exist and like it's absolutely terrible, like you could have gone for, like this was very light on that.
What I meant by this whole rant is that there are plenty of things, plenty of actual real prisons that are significantly worse than this prison described in this book, that we are sold and I guess propaganded into believing are totally appropriate. Yet this was sold as the worst prison ever. Does that make sense?
But also there was a whole section where she kind of had to survive being in a gas chamber, fire chamber, smoke, like cremation scenario, and it was a bit on the nose but not well done. It felt very inappropriate, especially to have it just be like a trial that the main character survived, and it wasn't really investigated in that way. It was very a cheesy way of approaching it. I don't know, I felt very uncomfortable about it. But then the actual character arc and the character motivations and the way the characters developed across the series was really, across the book, was really interesting, and the ending like flipped everything on its head, and I really enjoyed the ending. So I was very conflicted in my final thoughts of this. I liked it at first, and then it fell into some tropes and I didn't like it, and then the ending happened and I really liked it again. So I gave it 4 stars, but a very conflicted 4 stars. Then I read The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Her. This is a historical mystery following, it's set in 1400s Korea, and it's following a girl whose father was a detective and died, and she goes to try and find him by like pretending to be his son, even though he didn't have sons, but obviously like to move around. He was investigating these missing women in his home village, and she's then trying to solve that mystery at the same time as trying to find her father. I loved this. Her sister had, her and her sister had been separated for a long time, but grew up in the village, and her sister and her kind of rebond in this tenuous relationship, and they're looking for their father. And I loved this so much. If you're looking for something that like a YA book that has no romance, this is it. It's all about sisterly bonds and family bonds and solving mysteries that are really dark, and I loved it to pieces. The mysteries are not like incredibly mind-blowing twisted turny mysteries. They're more like solving the problem and like getting into the nitty-gritty of solving, and I loved it. I ended up giving this 5 stars. I thought it was so good. I loved it. I will continue to read everything June Ho writes because I loved her first book as well. It's so good. Then I read The Faded Sky by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is the sequel to The Calculating Stars, which is a sci-fi series based on the premise that there was a meteor that hit Earth, and the resulting catastrophe is gonna lead to a greenhouse effect in which the Earth is gonna heat up within the next like 20 years from the point of the book, which I think is like the early 60s or the mid 50s. And over the next 20 or 30 years, the Earth's going to become uninhabitable, and they're all looking for ways. It's an accelerated space race to the moon to like get off world. So the first one is them trying to get to the moon. This is them trying to get to Mars, and I was absolutely obsessed with this. It was so easy to read, so like I flew through it. I cried like more than once. Like there was some horrific stuff that absolutely gutted me, and I just, it was so good. It was so good, so catastrophic, not catastrophic, it was catastrophic to me. I absolutely loved it. I'm gonna keep reading this series. I've already bought the 3rd one. I love it so much. It's very science heavy. It's a very science heavy sci-fi, but I feel like in a way that's approachable and easily explained, and I never feel confused, and it's very well researched in my opinion. So I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Meyer and the Rising Dark by Rena Barron. This is a middle grade about Orisha, and I think they're Orisha. Are they Orisha? Or are they from a different African mythology? I honestly can't quite remember. The main character finds out her dad is a god of a type, and that he is responsible for like maintaining the boundary between like an evil realm and their realm, but her dad goes missing and she goes to go find him. I enjoyed this. I thought sometimes the prose was a little stilted, and I had to go back and reread a few times to figure out what was going on, like as things would kind of jump a bit strangely. But overall I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. The world was really interesting and I had a great enjoyable time. I gave it 3 stars. I'll probably read book 2 at some point. It was fun. Then I read Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. This is a Grease retelling, but featuring 2 boys. We follow Ollie and Will, and while Ollie is visiting his aunt, looking after her kids while she's having chemo and cancer treatment, he has a romance with Will, who lives in that town, over the summer, and then he's meant to go home for the school year but ends up staying, so it's a little Grease moment, and Will's not out at school, so it's Ollie and Will trying to negotiate this relationship, and them trying to navigate the situation in a way that tries not to hurt each other's feelings, but they're not hurting each other's feelings so much, and it's all just like messy but cute and adorable, and I really enjoyed this. I thought it was well developed and it was just so fun. I really loved it. Sophie Gonzalez is an Australian author, and I'm going to be reading more of her books in future because this was so fun. I really enjoyed it. I give it 5 stars. Then I read A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I'm going to be talking about this more on a live show coming up very soon. I think this will go out before the live show is live, with KJ and Dylan Casey /Casey, and they're gonna be chatting with me about this book as part of our new book club. We're calling it the Polyamory Plot Hole, and we're gonna be reading polyamorous books. So this is our first pick. It's a Dracula, Brides of Dracula story as described by the author, like a fast and loose version, and it's following one of the wives as her and 2 other partners end up in this situation with Dracula as vampires, and the abusive nature of the relationship between them and Dracula, and it was super good. I loved it to pieces, but I will talk about it more in that live show. I gave it 5 stars as an overview, but tune into that live show to see more detailed thoughts and discussions with us. I also did a reread of Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I'm not going to talk about this much because I've read it before. I feel like everyone's read it. I was just in the mood considering I'd watched the TV show recently, so I read Shadow and Bone the month before and then read this month. My plan is to read Siege and Storm at some point, and like alternate in between. I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed it just as much as the first time. It was really fun, and the audiobook was really good. Then I read The Gilded Ones by Namina Fauna. This is a YA fantasy following our main character, what's her name? Deka, and in her world, women are really kind of held down and controlled as a rule, and all women have to undergo this like purity test where they're bled, and if they bleed red, they're good, and if they bleed gold, they're like demons. She obviously bleeds gold, but that means a lot. She has magical powers, but also she ends up as part of this army, and there's a lot of twists and turns. It goes boom 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 boom. There was a slow point through this. It was brutal the whole way, which I really appreciated. Like, I love when things don't shy away from brutality. Like, if you're trying to tell me something's really hard, I want to like feel it, and this was brutal, which I really appreciated. Really like felt the vibe. It then, like, there was a dip where I was like, I feel like the plot's not driving very much. I don't know where this is trying to go. But then the ending like twisted everything and blew everything out of the water, and I really liked the ending. So I'll definitely be picking up book 2 in this series, but I don't really see how book 2, like book 2 wasn't well set up in this. Like, I feel like there might be kind of companion-y with a slightly different plot. Like, I can see it, but I don't see how it's a plot of a whole book. Like, this could be a standalone, but I will read book 2. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars just for that like middle slog, but like I really liked the ending, and the world was fascinating. I then read Shades of Magic, The Steel Prince Volume 2, Night of Knives. I think that's the whole title. This is the second comic bind up from V. Schwab in the Shades of Magic trilogy of graphic novels. I'm still waiting on the 3rd one to come in at my library. I will read it. I got this out from the library. I have to return it soon. And this was good. I liked it better than volume 1. I feel like volume 1 was a lot of like world building. This felt plotty, and I did really enjoy it. I gave it, what did I give it? 4 stars. The art style is still not my favorite, but the plot was much stronger in this one than volume 1. These follow Maxim, who is the king in the Dark Shade Magic series, and is a young teenager in this one. I enjoyed it. I also listened to The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which is another reread for me. I enjoyed this as much as maybe a little less than I did the first time. I enjoyed the audiobook, but I found myself losing track occasionally, which was less of a problem for me reading it physically. And I think if I hadn't already read it before, I would have had a harder time keeping up with the audiobook. Though I liked all the narrators and I thought it was done really well, like the actual narration was really well done. I had a good time listening to this, and I still don't know how to explain to people why I like this, other than that I think a lot of people don't realize it's a like RP, I don't know what type of game, but like a kind of like an open world game, but then you're reading it. So it's following some video game mechanics, but Zachary, the main character, is the one making the choices, not you. And so there's a lot of branches that are kind of opened and give you potential opportunities, but then they're closed because a choice is made, and so you're left with a lot of questions, but that's intentional for the design. That is a big like conceptual idea, and I can understand why people might find that confusing. Like, where in a standard narrative style, threads are opened with the plan for you to be aware of them and continue on, and they'll somehow merge back in. This has a lot of threads that are opened and never closed, because it's following like a game narrative, not a book narrative. And I loved it. I've always loved this book, and I think it does some really interesting things. It's very metaphorical and very vibes. It's not plot heavy. Like, there's a plot, but because of that nature of like opening options and then things fall away because you've picked an option, the plot can seem a bit wishy-washy and confusing, but the characters and the vibes are just so strong that I don't even care. I don't even care. I gave it 5 stars as last time, and I really loved it. I really loved it. Then I read a middle grade, which is Edge of the Ocean by L.D. Lipinski. This is the sequel to the original Stranger Things travel agency, and follows our main character Flick, who is now kind of like working for the travel agency. And this travel agency is a like store with all these suitcases, and you travel into different worlds through the suitcases. This one is set with pirates at sea, and I really liked it. I don't think I loved it quite as much as book 1, but it was so fun, and the characters are so interesting, and the world is just super fascinating. Also, the supporting character, he's here. He's like a slightly older, guiding him to the world character. I think he's meant to be like late teens, early 20s. I think he's college age. She's like 12. And he's a trans man whose father's gone missing, and so he's kind of taken over the shop. And so it's just like wholesomely there. They just like discuss binders occasionally, and it's just like super cute and adorable. Flick is such like she's a gun. I love her, and I can't wait to read more in this series. I hope it goes for ages. Like, I want a big long series of these guys. I think there's a lot of potential. I gave this one 5 stars. I read another middle grade after that, which was Amelia, Fang and the Naughty Caddycorns by who writes Amelia Fang? Why am I forgetting her name? Laura Ellen Anderson. This series is for younger readers and features Amelia, who's a vampire. They live in like a nighttime world. It's very like Ruby Gloom-esque, and this time they're looking after these little unicorn cats, Caddycorns, that are her aunt's like pets, and also she's dealing with having a new baby brother. It was really cute. It's a quick little audiobook. The physical books are illustrated, but I've been listening to the audiobooks and they have all the voices and they're so fun. I would really recommend them. Maybe even for kids, like reading along and listening along would be really fun. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in Mistborn Era 2, and we follow Wax and Wayne. It's a flintlock fantasy, so it's kind of like a western, and I really enjoyed it. It's a mystery, and kind of like a superhero-esque mystery, but they're not superheroes. They have powers, but so does everyone. Well, so do most people. I really enjoyed this. It's fun, and I think like the heisty mystery elements were just what I needed. And obviously set in the Mistborn world with all the kind of like rules and regulations of the Mistborn world that you would know if you've read the original Mistborn trilogy. But it is like much shorter, much more accessible in my opinion, but it doesn't always explain the world super well, because it is like the fourth book in a series technically. And I really like that the little like threads that follow through from the previous time of the original trilogy. So I had a really great time reading this. I gave it 4 stars. It was really fun, and April and I buddy read this as part of our ongoing Brandon Sanderson buddy read thing we're doing. And we're going to be finishing off this, or as far as currently published, because the last one of this era hasn't published yet, but we're going to read the next 2 very soon. Then I read Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jagada. What is up with my lighting? Thank you. Please light my face. This is a young adult contemporary following Honey and Ishu, who are both Bengali. Can't remember which is which, but one of them is from India, one's from Bangladesh, and it's a fake dating trope romance. It's so cute, so fun. I was like obsessed with the 2 of them. They absolutely stole my heart. I love them, and the dynamic was so fun. They brought out the best in each other, and I loved it so much. It's like everything you could want in a YA contemporary. It was so fun. I had a great time reading it, and I would totally recommend it. I loved Henna Wars, which was Adiba Jagada's first book, and I loved this just as much, so I would definitely recommend this. It was amazing. I gave it 5 stars because that wasn't obvious. Then I read Golden Hand by Garth Nix, which is a sequel to the original Old Kingdom trilogy. This follows Clariel, well, Clariel's in it, but Lyriel and Nicholas, and also Sabriel and Touchstone, and the characters we know from the series. And in this one we also get a new character. What's her name? I can't remember her name. What is her name? Theron, who is from a little tribe up in the forest, and she's carrying a message for Lyriel, and it's solving a world problem, and it was just really fun. I really enjoyed it, and what did I end up giving it? I think I gave it 4 stars. It's not my favorite in the series, but it did a pretty good job of standing alone, whereas like my biggest problem with book 2 and 3 is really they should have been one really big book, but they were split into 2. There is another book in this series coming out this year, which I think is a prequel. I think it's Sabriel's parents, if I'm remembering correctly. I am really excited about it. I love this world. It's really fascinating, and it's a great like Western fantasy, like Western style fantasy, a great example of it. I think it's really well constructed and really interesting. I also listened to the audiobook of Winter this month, which is a chunky audiobook. It took ages. I'll come back to this because that's my lunch. I just stopped to eat lunch, so the angle might be a little bit different, but let's jump back in. So the next book I read in the month was Winter by Marissa Meyer, which is the 4th and final book in the Lunar Chronicles, or like the 4th main book. I listened to this on audiobook. It was long. I didn't love it. I think mainly it just dragged. There was just like, it's like 800 pages. These are like paper thin. Yeah, over 800 pages. It's huge, and I just It didn't feel like it needed to be that long. Like, I really dragged through it. And I think that was my biggest complaint about this. The world is fun as always. The plot was fun. I just couldn't keep invested at the same capacity for 800 pages. And it was like a 25-hour audiobook, and I just couldn't do it. It wasn't working. So I gave it 3 stars. It was fun. It just was not like mind-blowing. Then I read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is a new adult time travel romance, sapphic romance. We follow August and Jane, and August is new to New York and is bisexual and trying to find her place in like a new friend group, and she's never really felt settled and like family. She's got a kind of weird family life. And she meets Jane on the train, but Jane can't leave the train. She's from the 70s and caught in time on the train. And it was really, really fun. I gave this 5 stars. I had a great time reading it. I flew through it. I thought the character dynamics and friendship, fan family element was so good. I really liked the romance. It's not particularly steamy. Like, for some reason everyone thinks like, so many people talk about Casey McQuiston's books as being like really raunchy. They're not. I don't quite get it. The most raunchiest aspect of this is that they like have some semi-public sex. It's not even public, it's just like in a public space where they could be walked in on. Not that they, oh, they might have had one public sex encounter, but it's pretty fade to blacky. Like, it's not very detailed, it's very vague, but it was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was really, the plot and the character dynamics were all really fascinating. I enjoyed it so much, I sped through it really fast. I liked it. It was 5 stars. My only DNF for the month was Ignite the Sun by Hannah C. Howard. This is a young adult fantasy following a girl called Syria, who is, they're living in a world where there's no sun, but she's got some kind of sun-related magic. And the queen's out to get her. For me, this just felt a little convoluted and tropey, and I was having a hard time getting into it. I was listening to the audiobook and I just really, like, I think I got 100 pages in and I just didn't really get it. I wasn't invested. And that's normally about my limit of like 100 pages, where I will then decide to DNF something if I'm really not interested in it. So we kind of hit there and I wasn't feeling it. So I DNF'd this. I do love the cover, but I will be unhauling this at some point. Hopefully someone else will really love it. Then I read The Infinity Quartz by Akemi Dawn Bowman. This is a sci-fi fantasy maybe, following our main character, what's her name, Nami, who is Japanese American, and she lived in a world that's got like a really, like a slightly more advanced kind of Siri that they wear on their watch, and they get its name's Ophelia, and they get Ophelia to do like everything for them, a la Siri. And then Nami is killed in a robbery, and she goes to like the afterlife and wakes up, and they're in this place called Infinity that's meant to be shaped by people's consciousness and ideas, but instead of it, like everyone who died, but instead it's been taken over by this technology, Ophelia, and it's implemented in kind of like a Fae court style scenario, but they're like technological. They are AIs, but it's kind of like a Fae Quartz dynamic. This was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I listened along to the audiobook as I read this with my eyes, and it was really fast paced and fun. I do think there was, like, I was maybe wanting something a little bit more elevated from it, but I really, really enjoyed my time reading it. It was really intriguing. I'm interested to see where it goes. I think what I was struggling with is kind of this sense of, like, I either want to have no clue how the world works and it's all metaphor and just vibe and going with it, or I like to have clear rules and boundaries and guides of how magic works. And this kind of fell in the middle, where I had to kind of believe some things on faith without strict like rules and understanding about the limitations of the world, but the limitations weren't really like grounded in a clear system or mechanic. So I just kind of struggled with that part of the world building because it was like all about being just built on the thought, like you just had to think things to do them in Infinity. But then there were limitations to that, and I didn't really like the way those limitations applied. Didn't really have a kind of rule or system that made sense to me. And I just kind of had to cold faith it, which I kind of struggle with sometimes. So like that kind of held me back from a 5-star. This was a high 4-star for me. And I will continue the trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. Then I read a couple of graphic novels. The first one I gave 4 stars. The second one I gave 5 stars. And that is Check Please volumes 1 and 2. This one's called #hockey. This one's called Sticks and Scones. This is a college comfy rom-com-y kind of book about Biddy, who is a hockey player for his college hockey team, and his romance with the lead star player. Biddy was an ice skater before he switched to hockey. He's like a figure skater, and he's little and like moves around the thing, and he's into baking. And it's really just like a contemporary college romance. It kind of has Giant Days kind of vibes, if you enjoy Giant Days. And I really liked the series. The second one was the better of the two. I will say I feel like the art style and stuff, like Biddy looks really young in the art style, but this is all set at college. So Biddy just looks very young. I really enjoyed these. I thought they were great. And yeah, 4 and 5 stars. I liked the second one a little better. Then I listened to I Think I Love You by Oriane de Sombre, I think is how you pronounce this author's name. This is a contemporary romance, another sapphic contemporary romance between 2 characters, Emma and Sophia, and they're making a movie for a competition. Sophia doesn't believe in like sweeping romances and love. Her parents have recently divorced and she's not dealing well with it, and Emma is struggling to figure out how to come out as bisexual and is a big believer in like sweeping rom-coms, and it's the two of them trying to like come together to make a movie, but they're kind of in conflict. And it's a romance. It was good. I didn't love it. I think it was just like a little cheesy at times, but it was very fun and enjoyable. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I read Unraveled the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim, which is the sequel to Spin the Dawn, but takes a very like left of field turn from the end of Spin the Dawn, and this as far as I feel like, I mean, Spin the Dawn like halfway through went and swung left, and this kind of pushes that direction even further. I didn't love this. Spin the Dawn is kind of, it's pitched as Project Runway meets Mulan, and this one doesn't really have much of the Project Runway elements. I liked this. I didn't love it. I had a hard time like really getting a feel for the plot for some reason, and I just couldn't really fully get behind it. It kind of went in directions I wasn't anticipating. And it's a lot darker than I thought it would be, but also in a way that like didn't sit like in the right spots for me to feel it emotionally. I gave this 3 stars. It's enjoyable. I think the duology as a whole is like enjoyable, but I just didn't love them, and I think I liked this one a little less than book 1. Then I read Cool for the Summer by Dahlia Adler. This is another sapphic contemporary, and we follow Larissa, it's kind of a Grease retelling as well, kind of. We follow, kind of from the Danny perspective, we follow Larissa, who went on this summer break to a place she doesn't normally go. Her mum's like works for this rich guy, and his daughter is there as well, and they have a summer fling, and then they come back to school, and she thinks she's like back to normal, and she didn't quite know where the fling came from. She didn't consider herself bisexual beforehand, and it kind of threw her for a loop. And then the like star quarterback, who she's always had a crush on, is suddenly interested in her, and she's kind of pursuing that. But the girl that she had this fling with has started at her school, and it's kind of like a Grease-esque moment where she's trying to negotiate all of that. This was super fun. I think a very relatable, very teen, and the characters all really felt like they were making the like teen mistakes. It felt really grounded in a high school experience, and I like really appreciate that. And the characters were just really fun, and everything was like fun. For some reason I thought this was like, I thought the endgame relationship was between her and the guy, which it's not. I don't know, I must have got it confused with something else. And so for a little bit I was like, this isn't adding up, right? Like, she has to end up with the girl, right? Like, yes, of course she does. And I loved it. So it was kind of like the exact opposite. Like, it's the female version of Only Mostly Devastated. But also Only Mostly Devastated follows like the Sandy character of the Grease dynamic, and this follows the Danny character of the Grease dynamic. But I loved it. It was super fun. I had a great time reading it, and I gave it 4 stars. It is also really short if you wanted a fun summery read. It's like cold and wet outside here because it's the southern hemisphere and we're in winter, but it was a fun summery read. Then I read Odd Spirits by S.T. Gibson. This is a novella, kind of, nobody's a novella, it is novella length. We follow a couple who both are in this magical, like a very like grounded magical setting. So like he does some summonings and stuff, and she, like, it's like a contemporary magical setting. She reads cards and things, and they have a spirit living in their house and they're trying to get rid of it. But it's a lot about their dynamic and their relationship with each other. It was super fun. There were some bits that like paced a bit weird, but overall I really enjoyed it, and it was 4 stars. I also listened to Kings, Queens and In-Betweens by Tanya Bateju. I listened to this so many times. Bateju, I think. And this is about a girl who has a crush on one of her friends, but it kind of goes nowhere because the friend's not interested. And she's then trying to figure out like what to do with all this like pining energy, and she ends up falling in with a crowd of drag kings and queens, like learning to express herself through drag, and a little romance. It was really cute. There's also like a really dark subplot with, it's not dark, but it's like intense, with her mum who left after having an affair situation with their neighbor who was also a woman, and the mum's just like walked away and totally cut herself off from her family, and the main character is really like struggling with that. Nima, I think the main character's name is, if I'm remembering correctly. And she's, yeah, struggling with that and figuring out what was going on because it's all kind of in the dark, and yeah, a lot going on, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well plotted and structured, and a really fun like queer joy exploration. I didn't love the narrator, but I thought it was a good book, so 4 stars. And finally, my last read of the month was an absolute surprise to me. We Are Blood and Thunder by Keisha Lupo. I was totally expecting to DNF this, and I think that was kind of based on the cover. I bought this on because everyone was hyping it, but it was like, oh, I hate the cover, but like everyone's hyping it. But no one had actually read it. It was all like the pre-press. And then I was like, okay, so I'm gonna read like 100 pages and I'm gonna probably not be invested, and I'll probably DNF it. Like sometimes I go into things expecting that, but whoa, no, I'm gonna have to unhaul this version because I can't stand this cover. And there's a newer cover available that's much more in line with the themes and ideas of the book. This does not represent the book, in my opinion, in any way, shape or form. And if you keep an eye out on my channel, hopefully in an upcoming haul I'll be hauling the other cover, which I think does a much better job of reflecting the contents of the book. This is like a very, how do I describe it? There's death magic and 2 kind of plots, but it's kind of medieval-esque. We follow 2 main characters and 2 main settings. One is in a like forest in a little village, surrounded by walls, locked off from everyone else because they have a plague going on. And they also keep to their own religion. They believe in the ancestors of their spirits, so they like kind of mummify their dead and keep them in tombs under the town, and it's a big part of their religion. And one of the main characters was involved in like looking after and treating the dead when they die. And that's a kind of a thing reserved for people with deformities or other kind of disabilities. It's kind of like they're shunted out of society and they look after the dead. That world hates any magic. So they worship the dead, but they hate magic. But they've locked off their gates. They don't let anyone in or out because there's this magical storm above their village that is the bringer of the plague. And they think if they don't let anyone in or out, they'll keep it contained. And they're just like hoping it'll go away. Then there's a city with a different, like, that has magic, accepts magic, happy about magic. And like the rest of the country thinks magic's all right, but you have to do it the right way. It has to be controlled. And so they believe in these gods that you like sign yourself up to a god and that looks after your magic and keeps you contained if you're a mage. Not everyone is, but like if you are a mage, you get picked, you get like assigned to one of these gods, and the gods limit and control your magic so you can't go out of control with chaos, which is like the energy of evil magic. And so we're following a woman or two women, one who is a cryptling, looks after the dead, but she gets out because she's accused of being magic because one of the dead like raises a hand and they accuse her of like controlling the dead. So she gets kicked out. Well, actually she escapes. She's meant to die and she escapes. Then another lady who is the daughter of the Duke that runs the little village, but is kind of going a bit mad and is being run by a different guy in his place, like a protector. She's the daughter of the Duke, and she was also magic and had left to escape so that they didn't kill her when she was a kid. And she's been trained under the god system, and she's coming back to kind of get rid of the magic storm thing. It sounds complicated. I promise the world building is actually really good. Like, I think the problem also is that summing that up into a synopsis is hard. So I feel like the synopsis didn't do a good job either. But the actual development of all that world building in here makes sense and is like gradual, and you get to kind of get the feel for it. I never felt overwhelmed by the world building. This is also part of a companion series. Like the other book by this author is set in the same world but following different characters. And I feel like you have these woodsy, necromancy kind of dead people vibes, but you also had this like magic system that was a lot around like focusing your ideas and elements and stuff with the gods, and it was fascinating. The characters were super interesting. The plot twist was insane. I do think it was maybe a little rushed in the last 50 or so pages, which is why I docked the stars and ended up being 4 stars for me. But the atmosphere was so fun, the characters were so interesting, and it was just like, yeah, the like final plot twist and the resolution could happen a bit quick. But that was literally my only fault with this. I loved this to pieces and I highly recommend it. I just hate this cover. And yeah, like I feel like it's hard to explain. Like, the synopsis that this gives on the back, which is pretty short, just says, in a city where magic is feared and the dead are worshipped, life is overshadowed by a powerful and devastating storm cloud. Like, yes, that's true, but I don't think it really sells the story. One young woman is running for her life, another is trying to return home. Technically true, doesn't really sell the story to me. Both are looking for a place where they belong. But what Lena and Constance don't realize is that the storm cloud binds them. Without each other, neither can get what she desires. Like, I think it just doesn't explain this, like, the bits about the plot that are, about the story that are good. Like, it doesn't sell it to me. I can't remember, it would have been like a brief pitch was what I originally was interested in. And obviously that sold me. But this doesn't sell me. Also, there's this element that's kind of, it's not steampunk, it's just like, kind of. It's magic driven little, clockworky kind of devices which tie into this world, which were also really cool. This world is so cool, and like, it sounds like a lot me trying to describe it. This is a 450 page book. 400, just over 400 page book. I think it takes the time for you to really get to know it properly. The characters were really interesting. The romance is not a central focus, but there is a couple of little romances. I also think it reads new adult, in my opinion. Like, the characters are late teens, they could be early 20s and it would make no difference to the plot. Like, all the character dynamics. They're not bound to teenagehood. Like, I feel like this is a very like new adult crossover kind of thing. Like, if you're wanting the kind of vibes and atmosphere of a young adult book, but you want your characters to behave like 20-year-olds, this is it, but not like a crazy, like, sexy way. They're just like not bound to like the immaturity of teens. Like, I feel like these characters are 20. I think at one point one of the characters is mentioned to be like 17, but I don't, like, she doesn't feel like it. She's probably the younger feeling of the two, but really, like, this could be new adult and be very content in that market setting. And the plot twist, which I'm not going to spoil, but it was literally amazing. It was so good. So please buy better cover than this and please read it, because it was amazing. 4 stars, but like literally based around like one issue of pacing. Also, I did read this over an extended period of time, more than I normally do, which does throw off my perception of pacing. So maybe if I'd read this in one setting, I wouldn't have that complaint. But I was like really busy over like the 4 days I read this. So I read it over a weird period of time. So if I had have read it in my normal pace of reading, I might not even have had that complaint. So I can't wait to get a better cover. So those are all the books that I read in the month of June. This video has been pretty long. This stack is pretty big. Thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these, please chat with me about them. I would love to know your thoughts and feelings on these books. Hopefully I've explained to you why I like them or why I don't like them. And yeah, thank you for watching. I feel really weird filming wrap-ups, like I'm always so confused. But hopefully you enjoyed this video, and otherwise I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!